Good evening and welcome back to BeRich. Today I have my good friend Prasant Perumal with me, and he has found a very interesting topic to discuss. There's a book that came out last year which discusses the early years of Warren Buffett, and it talks about his early
Investments.
investments. Warren Buffett started as an assistant to the great Graham in his Graham Newman partnership, and after that he left Graham Newman partnership, came back to his hometown Omaha and set up home. And what he did is he wanted to form a group of partnerships where he would be a partner with a group of people and invest money on their behalf. He would take a portion of the profits as his income. He had no regular income and he had some 5 6 partnerships. So the initial sets of companies we are now picking up are from the investments he did those days. Remember, this is before Berkshire Hathaway. Yeah, long before Berkshire Hathaway, when he takes these risks. He is still a very large shareholder in this company. And I think, if my memory is right, he has 21.6% of this company in Berkshire Hathaway. But these are principles you learn. Don't go blindly and copy it. This is a matter of great skill.
Thanks, Anand. Welcome everyone. So we're picking up investments for each video on the a book called Buffett's Early Investments by Brett Gardner. So we thought we'll pick up first the example of American Express. So Buffett made the investment in 1963 in this company. So I thought it's so at when he actually made the investment, he went really big. He actually invested 40% of the money that he had in his portfolio actually into American Express. So how? So the first question that I have for you, what was the opportunity that Buffett?
Okay,
What was the thing that actually led to
okay.
Buffett leading?
First, for most people who were born after 2000 or 90s, if you had not lived in the world of 80s and 70s and 60s, you won't know much of American Express. Now, American Express had a particular product called traveler's checks and a charge card. Today, only the charge card is famously there. What is the traveler's check? Suppose I went abroad in 90s or even the 80s. I had to keep with me some checks where I would have deposited the money upfront with the company. Thomas Cook used to issue that, and American Express was the biggest global player. So I would give my money to American Express. American Express would give me a checkbook. I could sign, show my ID, and take money from wherever I went. Two things would happen. American Express would keep the money first. For him, it was a float. And then
Can you explain what the use of a float is
the
for the
float
reader?
is
Yeah.
free capital. Till the time the checks came back to Amex, the money they remained with Amex. Amex would again lend that money on and make more money. And they were one of the first players in credit cards. They had a charge card where they used to take a higher commission on sale.
Mm.
Now, these two were the standard products and they were the most powerful brand at that time. This is in the early 60s. And they remained so till 90s when computers came and credit cards got linked all over the world and money could be transferred on wire. So this is before technology really changed banking. So we have to set the context right.
Context.
Now, American Express had several divisions. There was one particular division called warehousing division. The Amex, it was not contributing much to Amex. The CEO wanted to sell that. And there was a man called Donald who was running the warehouse division. Now he was willing to take any business to keep the business going so that it meant his job would be secure.
Yeah.
So he wanted the job. Now this is the basic dissertations. Because the chief didn't want this business. Donald was willing to take undue risks because he wanted this business to stay and his entire life was linked to this business.
He wanted
So
to keep his job.
he wanted to keep his
Yeah.
job. Now enter a man called unpronounceable Italian name.
Tino.
Tino.
Yeah.
Tino Divang, some name.
Yeah. We call him Tino. Yeah.
We call him Tino. So Tino was a Italian American. These guys are super smart and slightly shady. So no bank would lend to Tino. And Tino used to buy soya oil from manufacturers and trade in soya oil. Now he bought at a premium, thinking that he could pledge this commodity with banks. And the banks would lend him money, which will give him time to play more in the commodity market.
Yeah, so can you tell me exactly how that worked? So Tino would buy the oil.
Suppose I buy an oil for $100.
Yeah. So let's say you're Tino, you buy $100
dollars
oil.
of oil.
Yeah.
I go to the bank and pledge that 100 oil.
Okay.
They will give me $60.
Yeah.
So my 100 plus 60, $160. I can buy $60 more commodity. I pledge that 60, they'll give me 30.
Okay.
So your $100 can in effect become $200, $220. So it's a 1:2 leverage. So he wanted to leverage his position. But the banks would not trust him.
Yeah.
So what he did is he went to this Donald guy and said, you can store the salad oil for me and give me a warehouse receipt. Using that warehouse receipt, I'll borrow money.
So Tino is taking oil and using Amex's warehouse
to store it.
Store it and get a receipt.
And a receipt saying so many oils are there. Now the risk is transferred from Tino to Amex.
Okay.
Because when Amex says so many oil is stored, Amex certifies that it has inspected it and sees that there is oil there, and based on that it is selling.
So the banks are basically trusting Amex rather than
Tino. Because they wouldn't, if it was
wouldn't trust Tino. Okay.
If it was Tino, they wouldn't have given him the money.
Okay.
They were basically trusting the Amex verification. Now, in all those tanks, only 2 layers was salad oil. Most of them was seawater.
Okay.
When he, like in any trading, when he failed in the commodity market, the banks came calling for the money. And they wanted to sell the commodity and make the money. When they came to sell the commodity, they found out there was only seawater. And now, anyway, DeVito or whatever, Tino was not good for the money. So they wanted to take the money. Now, according to the reports, the total money claimed by the banks was $135 million.
The net worth of American Express at the time was around 79 million.
So 80 million you keep.
80 million, okay.
The demand was for 135. There was going to be bankruptcy threat and the price of Amex collapsed in the market. Now what Buffett did, he used a technique called a scuttleboat. So
I want to dig deeper into why did Amex actually make it? I mean, Amex was a well trusted company, and we see that this kind of a scandal, actually, this is a very basic scandal. They weren't basically checking whether the tankers actually had oil, right? So what were the incentive? Like you talked about Donald.
The incentive is only Donald
Miller,
because Donald Miller wanted to keep his job. So no look, no see.
So how can companies prevent that kind of thing from happening?
The company should not be too greedy for profits. It should be able to give security to employees, especially in banks.
Okay.
Now, what happened is, Buffett did the research everywhere using Phil Fisher's techniques and found out that people still were using Amex cards, were depositing money in the Amex system. The banks were making heavy commissions out of Amex because that's where the card was getting encashed. So the banks wanted the commission. And the float also was kept at banks. So he knew that the banks would settle with Amex for about $35 to $40 million, which they did eventually. So Amex share price had already collapsed. So he took about $13 million. Which was about 40% of his total net worth. Say $30 million was his managing money. He takes 13 million and punts it on one stock, which is not normally done.
I think it's 12 million that he actually invests.
So he puts in 40% of his
Portfolio. Yeah.
portfolio, that's 12 million.
Yeah.
That means it must be about
30 million.
30
Okay.
million
Okay.
roughly.
Okay.
And it becomes one of his biggest winners. He sits on it for 2-3 years. The stocks, he sells it a multiple of several times earnings. So he makes a lot of money. It's one of his biggest coups. And there is a point of time when he sells everything, when he merges all these companies with Berkshire Hathaway. He tells his partners whether you take cash or I'll give you Berkshire Hathaway shares. And if you want, I'll give you names of people who are following Benjamin Graham's principles. You can go to them. Walter Shaws, Irving Kahn. And these kind of guys, you can go and invest your money with them. I'm going to run this company. Either you can take cash or you can keep Berkshire Hathaway stocks. At that point, he sells everything, or before that, he sells everything in Amex. And then again, in another situation, he starts to build up position. And today, he has nearly 21% of Amex. So, Amex represents one of his biggest coups and a very early stage in his career.
The most interesting thing about this investment is obviously that he's put 40% of his money into that. And you particularly talked about the Philip Fisher's scuttlebutt technique. So,
Yes.
can you elaborate on that? What exactly does that
See,
involve?
normally, what happens is you normally want to put in a lot of money. You tend to look at the owner. And then you go talk to the people who use that product. And there are Phil Fisher's principles, which I have covered in my book, 13 principles. You check what the client thinks of the company, what the supplier thinks of the company, whether the product is popular. In this case, he goes to banks and finds banks are still want the fat commission they are making. Clients who of Amex know that this warehouse going down is public news. In spite of that, people are putting more money into Amex and taking checks. So in no way is this future of the company affected by the bad performance. So this $35 million, which is the final settlement, Amex is able to pay from its float and recover very quickly. That is the secret of the story.
So in this case, we see that Buffett is kind of an established investor here. He's not like world famous. But let's say we're talking about a retail investor in India. How can they go about like scuttlebutting like a company that
As it is very clear. Every company has its quarterly call reports. And if you can register for the calls, you are entitled to ask questions from the managing director. Normally is the owner sits, he cannot duck you. And you can also write questions to the investor center. Every company which is listed has an investment center. They have to reply to you. Normally, I do only B2C companies. So I normally go and talk to people who have bank accounts there. If I'm talking Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank, I know that it is the bank of the Nadas. And to what extent Nadas will go and hold on to that bank. If I choose Titan, I know how Titan treats its clients. So you get a lot of hints.
So it's a very qualitative analysis.
It's a qualitative analysis on top of a quantitative analysis. Okay. The quantitative analysis tells you that this company is cheap. The qualitative analysis tells you what is the quality of the company.
Quality of the company. And I think in Amex's case, it's also very clear from their financials as well. The 10 years leading up to 1963 that they've got like really good, a pretty steady increase in sales and
yes,
revenue.
It was a very steady company.
Yeah. So the numbers also tell you the quality of the company.
The numbers, more than that, quality, don't mix quality and quantity. What the client talks. See, there were people who told me Tata Steel will go belly up. After chorus, for many years, they were struggling. But I was continuing to buy as it fell. And in one steel boom, the debt became very manageable. At one time, the market cap of Tata Steel was less than that of their debt. That is the time you buy Tata Steel.
And another interesting thing is that Amex during the scandal wasn't a public company. It was actually, there was no limited liability protection for the shareholders.
There was no limited liability.
So was that pretty common for companies back then? Or
even today, what can you do? Even if you have got a limited liability protection, you get wiped out. The loss is only limited to the equity loss.
Yeah.
All companies by nature have a limited liability protection. Their limitation is only to the amount of money that they have invested. In the case of Amex, the leverage was the problem because the float was several times their equity. So if somebody could mismanage this, you can mismanage the float. That was the worry.
The float as well.
That is the worry. And that was a qualitative call on the chief executive, not on Donald.
And secondly, because it was not a limited liability partnership, it also meant that the shareholders would be held liable to actually pay any debt that the company has.
No. The company was a limited liability company. What you are reflecting is his partnership. His partnership also, if he had wiped the client would have lost their money, and he would have lost his money along with them. So Buffett did this deal not as a loss because Amex, he had to pay the Amex clients. If he had lost everything in this deal, whatever goodwill he had gained as an investment manager would have been destroyed if he had not been careful. But he was so certain of himself, he went big because the numbers were absolutely in his favor, and the fact that the bank settled for less because they wanted the commissions that Amex would pay meant that the company was going to turn around and do well. Normally, when a company falls on bad times, it is very difficult for somebody to buy that company, and people won't believe it couldn't go back. In case of ChatGPT, when ChatGPT got launched, everybody thought Google is dead. But actually, Google has more users for Gemini than what ChatGPT has.
And one more interesting thing is that when you're talking about bets like this, when there's a lot of bad news around a company, you as an analyst, you tend to think all the negatives, and you don't. Yeah, so that's a
but I have because I am influenced by him. I bought Google, I bought Toyota, I bought all the ones which are out of favor at that time.
Yeah. So how do you actually, at that point in time when there's a lot of bad news around the company, how do you stay rational and understand what's actually?
You do a numerical valuation, you do a quality check. You go anywhere in the world, Toyota is the number one car, and people will continue to buy a Toyota. And the faith in Japanese innovation that when the push comes to shove, Toyota will produce a electric car which is cost effective.
And one more thing, since you talk about numbers, it's that the Buffett bought Amex at a PE was around like 16, 17. So it wasn't exactly cheap.
It had fallen dramatically.
Yeah, but it was still not cheap. So there was a change in the style of investing, you could say, with Amex. Yeah,
the change came away from the Buffett style. He started to the Fisher style, influenced by Charlie Munger. That's why he said, "I'm only the contractor. Charlie is the architect." Okay.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. We'll bring more such videos for you where we discuss lives and times of the great Warren Buffett. Thank you. If you like this video, kindly subscribe to our channel, turn on the bell notification. And if you do not turn on the bell notification, you will not be notified every time we put out a video. Once again, I thank you for your support for BeRich.